You write JavaScript, but do you really know how JavaScript reads your code? Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is GENIX-JS, a YouTube channel dedicated to simplifying front-end development for you. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to think like the JavaScript engine itself so that you can write better bug-free code. Most developers use expressions and statements every day, but they don't realize they're following hidden rules that control how JavaScript executes their logic. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing just what expressions are and what statements are. The first thing I need you to do is open your Visual Studio Code editor. If you don't have it installed, there's a link in the description to install it. So click on Start button and click on New Window. So once you have your new window opened, I want you to open the folder which is in the link in the description and go to where the project is stored. So everyone, I have the project opened already. Before we talk about syntax, let's break it down logically. What are expressions? In a very simple form, expressions basically return a value. What are statements? Very simple. Statements perform an action, but they do not return values. An example of an expression is a simple additional operation, right? We talked about operators in the last video. We're looking at expressions and statements in this video. A simple arithmetic operation is an expression, right? It evaluates to 15, it returns a value. It evaluates to a value. Why a statement performs an action. For example, console.login a particular value to the browser console, or returning a function, right? Executing a function that returns a value. That's an example of statement. So let's look at example in code. So now the first thing I need you to do, now that you have your VS Code open, is to click on this new folder here inside the repository we've been using so far and type 07 expressions and statements, right? And click on enter. So you can see how structured this JavaScript is. We have variables, data types, functions, data type methods, control structures, operators, expressions, which are the basics and fundamental of understanding JavaScript. So inside here, I want you to click this folder that we just created and click on new file and then type your index.html. So we're not typing this from scratch. I'm just going to click on this. You can see it has given us this emet abbreviation. You can copy it, but I don't advise you do so. Click on tab, and that has given us our boilerplate code, which is very essential. Covered it in our the first video in the description below. So now we need to link our JavaScript as usual. So I have the scripts and then src. Link it to your script.js file, which we'll create now. So we have our JavaScript created, and then let's split our screen. We have our HTML and then we have our JavaScript, right? So that's basically that. So an example of an expression which returns a value is a simple variable declaration of a value. So we're going to call this value a, and then we have something like 5 plus 10. Right, this is an expression. Why? Because it returns a value. 5 plus 10 is going to give us 15, right? This is an expression. It returns a value, and then a statement performs an action. Why? We're performing an action of returning the value that this expression gives. That is what a statement is. So this is basically a statement. And then we can put in bracket performs an action. So basically the key takeaway from this particular code is that every statement is a step in your program, while every expression creates a value. It's as simple as that. So every step you take in your program, the consoles, the functions, the variable declaration that is returning a value, whatever step you're taking, right, is a statement. Then the expression is the value that statement returns. So now let's look at the types of expression and how they work. But before we look at the type of expression and how they work, I want you to hit on that subscribe button and click on like, and stay tuned for the new videos I'll be uploading. So let's run this with live server. If you don't have it installed, come here to extensions and then install live server by every 2 days. So now I'll right click here and open with live server. So guys, once you have your live server running, I would love you to right click on the page and then inspect. All the steps are the steps that we've gone over and over again. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this at the right and put our code editor at the left. Alright, so we have that set. So you need the console. You need to see what we're outputting. And you can see that it's giving us 15. Let's move this a bit to the right. Now you can see that it's giving us 15 according to what we have here. So that's basically it. So let's look at the types of expressions that we have and how they work, right? Expressions come in different flavors. Let's break them down. So the first type of expression, as we looked at operators in the last video, is an arithmetic expression. The arithmetic expression, right? That's the first type, the arithmetic expression. So arithmetic expressions mixes of the plus, the minus, the times, and basically the division, right? That's what arithmetic expressions do. So any math operation that produces a value is an arithmetic expression. So an example is what we covered here. This is an arithmetic expression. So let's look at the sum expression. So we have sum, let's say sum of two numbers. This is going to be equal to, let's say, 9 plus 8. This is an arithmetic expression which we evaluate. It returns a value, right? So it's going to return 17 to us. This is an expression, arithmetic expression. So let's create another expression again. Let's create product, which is multiplication, and then we have sum times, let's say sum times 2. So this is also an expression, an arithmetic expression that returns a value of, it returns 34 to us, right? Because 17 times 2 is 34. So that is arithmetic expression. You can practicalize more. So your own examples come here, right? You can do for subtraction, you can do for division. So the second type of expression is logical expression. You can see how we're building on our knowledge from the last video, which was operators. Logical expressions, and this mixes of the and, the or, and the not that we covered in the last video, right? So this one, they return true or false. This kind of expressions, as I said, they return true or false. That's basically the logical operations, expressions. So let's just put a comment to make sure that we're reinforcing what we're learning. Any math operation that produces a value is an arithmetic expression. And then for logical, these ones return true or false. So any expression that returns true or false is a logical operation expression. And an example is logged in that we used in the last video, right? True and false, as we covered, and will give you false, right? This is a logical expression. We can say and logical expression, and then you can say returns false. And then let's give another example. Let is the admin, right? If the person is an admin, that means the person is not logged in, right? So the person is an admin. We're not doing anything logical here, we're just demonstrating. So is not logged in, we're using not here, right? This will evaluate to true, right? Because the opposite of this is false, this evaluates to false, then is false is going to give us true, as covered in the last video. So I advise you watch the last video. So this is not logical expression. So basically this expression returns true, right? So in summary, for logical expressions, JavaScript treats these expressions as values. That's basically what JavaScript does, right, when expressions are being executed. So the next type of expression is the one we covered in the third video, which is known as function expressions versus function statements. So we're going to be looking at function expressions and function statements. So function expressions first, right? So function expressions, let's just type what it means. Function expressions, in a simple form, they create function and they assign the function to a variable. And because anything that is assigned to a variable is an expression, because it is a value, it returns a value. A variable without a value is just initialized, it is not declared. But a variable with a value has been declared, and functions can be stored in a variable because they return a value. So let's just type this creates function expressions creates a function and assigns it to a variable, making it an expression. So that's basically what function expressions are. And an example is, for example, a greet function, right? A greet function that basically returns hi there, right? I love JavaScript. So this greet function is greeting me and it's telling me that I love JavaScript. So this is a function expression, right? So now let's look at function statement, right? Function statement is function declaration without storing the function in a variable. So another example is when, for example, we just create a simple greet function without storing it into a variable. Or let me use an example, go home function, without storing this go home function into a variable. This is a function declaration or statement. So function declaration or statement, right? So that's the difference between a function expression and a function statement, right? So this one just returns maybe a string going home, but then the difference here is if I now store going home, new function, let's say new function, let's say I store go home into a variable, then this makes it a function, this makes it an expression, not a function expression. Although it's storing a function, it's a function expression when you're storing the function directly in the variable. It's a normal expression when you've declared the function and then you store the function being executed into a variable. But let's still call it function expression to avoid confusion. So that's basically the difference between function declaration and function expressions, because function declaration are also known as statements, right? So now the key difference between function expression is that function expressions can be used inside another expression, right, while function statements cannot. What do I mean? If you look at this function expression, we can store this particular function in this expression, right? We can also now go ahead and say, for example, let's say const, initialize or execute greet function. So execute greet function can take in greet. Execute greet function can take in this greet, right? And then if we console.log execute greet, you can see that we would have I love JavaScript. So we basically have a function stored in a variable. This variable becomes a function, right? Because a function is stored inside of it. And then we now store this function being executed just like we did here directly inside another variable, and then we console.log the value. Imagine if we had not executed it, what will it give us? It will give us a function declaration, right? So let's console.log new function and see what it gives us. So new function gives us going home because going home has already been declared and then executed as an expression. So our console.login. So this is the same thing as this when we store it in a variable, right? But then I can also go ahead to just execute the greet function without having to store it in a variable. This is what makes an expression an expression, because an expression can be used inside another expression, just like we did here, right? So I can put an expression or a function expression can be used inside another expression. Right? So I can cancel this. And since let me remove this. Let's remove this. A function statement cannot be used in another expression. Inside another expression. So it's as simple as that. So that's just everything about expression. So now let's look at the real thing about this video that I'm doing now, right? That we're learning. Let's go deeper. Let's learn how JavaScript reads our code, right? So now there are some points to note. So I'll say how JavaScript executes code under the hood. Now the need to understand this is because when we start to cover advanced topics like asynchronous JavaScript, we digs down to how JavaScript runs outside of the browser. We would need to understand how JavaScript runs our code first. So JavaScript executes code under the hood, right? How JavaScript executes code under the hood. So now the first thing you must note is the first way is that JavaScript reads top to bottom. So it's basically using the top down approach. So JavaScript reads, that's the synchronous approach, which we covered in the control structure, sequential control structure, reads top to bottom, right? And then the second thing is that you must know that expressions are evaluated first. So if you have, this is a statement, this is evaluated before this, because this would give, is depending on this, right? This is top down. Even if you put, for example, if I put this before this, to give me an error because you cannot access a before its initialization, right? So we need to put this back down, right? Expressions are evaluated first. Why are expressions evaluated first? Expressions are evaluated first because statements depend on the expression. So now let's look at this very well. It's not always the case. Statements are executed after. So let's type it down first, then statements are executed after. We will demonstrate this. So I want you to note the reason why I said expressions are evaluated first. It is not me, it's JavaScript, but let me explain. Expressions are evaluated first because when something is evaluated, it was declared. When something is executed, it is relying on what was evaluated, right? We look at this example. Now we can see that sum is equal to, if I put, for example, 7 plus 8. This is an expression, but we're not going to see anything printing to the screen, right? We're not going to see anything printed to the screen because we're not console.logging it. But if I do 7 plus 8 here, it's directly in the browser. This is an expression, right? So a statement basically allows me to print this 7 plus 8 to the screen. So this is an expression. It is evaluated first. So this becomes a statement when I now say, okay, console.log this 7 plus 8 to the screen for me. So now look at what's going to happen. 7 plus 8 is the expression that returns 15. So now we've now gotten 15. So the statement now relies on the expression value. That's why expressions are evaluated first, then statement executes expression. So let's just put it in other words, statement executes expressions. That's why they are executed after, right? So let's look at more examples. So an example of this is, let's say you have a simple mathematical expression, right? So let's do a complex one. 9 times 7 divided by bracket open 4.66 plus 8, then everything, sorry, plus 8, then minus 2 raised to power 6. So this is a complex mathematical expression, right? If I this is an expression. So the value has been evaluated already by JavaScript, but then for us to see the value, for us to execute this value, we need to type a statement that shows us the result of the expression, right? So this just justifies that expressions are evaluated before. So this is the answer. Expressions are evaluated before statements, right? So here, this 9 times 7 divided by 4.6 plus 8 bracket minus 2 raised to power 6, everything is evaluated because of precedence. Then at the end of the day, the statement is then returned as the value of this, right? So that is that about everything that you need to know about expressions or statements. That JavaScript runs your code from top to bottom as sequentially. Expressions are evaluated before statements. Statements are executed after because they rely on the expression. The value that we're going to execute is the expression, right? So expression return values, statement executes expressions, right? They perform an action. So let's look at some common pitfalls, and then let's look at a real world example, right, of how you can use expressions and what to avoid when using them, right? So now let's go. So common pitfalls when using expressions and statements. So now the first common pitfall is using expression inside statements. You don't do this. Right, so now what do I mean? For example, you have something like let x be equal to bracket open y plus 10 equals to 10 or equal to 12. So now look at this variable. The reason why you shouldn't use this is y is an expression on its own, right? This is an expression because it's an expression that returns a value of 12, right? I know you might say it's a statement, but this is not a statement, not performing an action. We're evaluating 12 to y as the variable, and then we're returning 12. That's y, right? So that's basically the expression. Now this is an order expression again that assigns this into this, right? So that's basically what we need to do. So the solution here, so the reason why you shouldn't do this, is because it is confusing, right? This is a very confusing statement or an expression because we don't know what x is until we execute what this is, and execution has to do with statements, right? So it's not good that you use expressions inside of statements or use statements inside of expressions, right? So the best thing you can do, because this is known as an implicit global variable, which basically this variable is accessible to this particular line of code, right? So it's global because we don't know what is assigning it, we don't know where it is available to, so it is just there, which is a problem. So a way to fix this is to separate this and put something like let this be equal to this, and then we can also let x be equal to y. So these are brute expressions now, right? This is also an expression now, and then each statement can be console.log y. If you console.log y, we get 12. If you console.log x, we'll get 12, right? So now this expression is dependent on this expression because if I change the value of y, I get 16. But then x is storing 12. Sorry, x. I also get 16. But then even in this 16, I can now do minus 4, which makes me get my 12 again. So separating your expressions without having to use them inside an expression will give you what you need, right? So the bottom line here is don't use expressions in statements and don't use statements in expressions. And I know you might ask, but you said expressions can be used in other expressions. Yeah, expressions can be used in other expressions when you store the first expression in a variable and then you store this other expression in another variable like we've done here. Not when you're storing it directly inside the first expression. That is not an expression. That's you using an empty implicit variable that we don't even know where it's stored inside an expression. So it is not complete, it's confusing that way. So that wraps up this video, and you just learned how JavaScript truly reads and executes your code. In the next video, we're going to use this knowledge against the e-commerce project that we're going to be building, because the series starts after this, to build our first e-commerce functions or dynamically calculate prices, discounts, and taxes in real time. Hit like and subscribe. See you in the next one.